Should I get better or should I get out? Should I level up or should I burn it to the ground and start all over again? When we are looking for change and transformation, we have so many different options. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the difference between change, improvement, and how focusing on that is going to help our transformational process. This is Gene Monterastelli, and welcome to the Tapping Q&A podcast, recorded live to tape from Williamsburg in Brooklyn. This is episode 659, originally aired April 23rd, 2025. Hi, everyone. I hope this finds you well wherever you are and whatever time of day you're getting a chance to listen to this. Thanks for spending a little time with me today. A number of months ago, near the end of the NFL season, that's the National Football League, that's professional football, American football here in the United States for my international friends. Near the end of the season, I was listening to a podcast hosted by Bomani Jones. Bomani is a sports commentator, but he's a culture commentator. He talks about lots of really, really interesting things. I love listening to him as I am doing dishes or taking a walk, or he's a great companion in that particular way. And as the season was winding down, he was talking about the performance of the Minnesota Vikings quarterback by the name of Sam Darnold. And what Bomani's comment is he has improved, he has not changed. And this is the context of what was going on. Sam Darnold was the second string quarterback. He was the backup quarterback going into the season, and their new rookie quarterback for the Vikings had injured himself before the season even started. So Sam Darnold went from being the understudy, the second string guy, to starting. And the reason that he had been the second string guy was he wasn't good enough for one of the teams to hire him to be the starting quarterback. And then an amazing thing happened. He had a brilliant season with a few speed bumps along the way. And in reflecting on the season, when the team had to decide, do we keep the second string guy that did a good job? Do we go to the rookie who we see as the future of our club? And what Bomani said was something that was really fascinating. Again, he said, Sam Darnold has improved, but he has not changed. And what he meant was there were things that he was doing that was better than before, but the types of mistakes that he made, holding onto the football too long, trying to throw into defense that couldn't handle the pass, and there was no way that he was going to be successful as an offensive player. He still had these tendencies to make the exact same mistakes. So he'd improved a number of things about his game, but his flaws at the core were exactly the same. And so when we're looking for healing, we want to be really clear about the type of healing that you want. A year or so ago, I was working with a client. I just remember this because of the conversation so clearly. At the beginning of the session, I'm like, what do you want? She said, I want better. And I'm like, great. What does better mean? And she's like, I don't know. I just don't want this. And so it is great. And most change starts from the place of wanting us to be in a circumstance where we no longer have the painful thing that is in front of us. The transformation we want is to escape the pain, to escape the physical ailment, to escape the limiting belief, to escape whatever the thing is. But not only do we need to know what we want to have changed, it's important that we understand how we want that transformation to happen. So let's take a look at these two ideas, this idea of improvement and this idea of change, and then let's kind of figure out a rubric or a heuristic to figure out how we make that change, and then do a little tapping, because I think there's one little thing that's going to get you caught up or tripped up in this particular thing when you start looking through this lens. So when we are looking for improvement is about refining and optimizing the things that we are already doing. I have a morning routine, but I want it to work better. I'm working within an existing system. So for example, I want to become better at presenting podcasts. I want to have a more effective self-care routine. These are circumstances where it is something that I'm already doing, and I'm already probably doing it to some degree of success. And so what I'm not doing is I'm not changing radically my approach. I'm taking what I'm already doing and I'm improving it. Or change is the opposite of that. Change involves becoming something that is fundamentally different. And to change, it doesn't require an improvement of skills, but oftentimes it requires something much more radical. I am shifting my mindset. I'm changing my identity. I'm changing my environment. I am letting go of old habits and I'm creating new habits. There's a difference between changing my workout based on the fact that I am getting older. That's really an improvement. I'm doing the same thing, but I'm optimizing my workout for the fact that I'm now in my 50s versus when I was in my 40s. Where change would be I'm not working out and I'm now starting to work out. And so we're looking at transitioning. I change careers. I leave a toxic relationship. I quit a job that is no longer serving me. I heal deep emotional wounds. Oftentimes, change requires disruptiveness and a change of our comfort zone and putting us into something new. Improvement is what we're looking for when we're looking for something that's incremental. Change is where we're looking for something that is radical and different that serves us in a brand new way. And so when you sit down to tap, when you sit down to heal, to transform, asking yourself the simple question, do I want improvement or do I want change? And I'm actually going to change that because that is the stumbling block I mentioned at the beginning. Because more than likely, want is the word that trips us there. Do I want improvement or do I want change? Well, there's a part of us that is going to subconsciously think, well, change is better than improvement. Improvement is just optimization. Change is creating something that is radical and new. So obviously, I want change. But the reality is there are lots and lots and lots of situations where improvement is actually the best path because improvement typically is less disruptive. Improvement typically can happen much quicker. And if I'm working on something, it is easier for me to improve it than it is easier for me to change it. So, for example, I was working with a nutritionist a couple of years ago, and we were looking at my diet, and John just said, Gene, this is actually really, really awesome. We're in a good spot. Instead of us having to overhaul everything, what I want you to do is I want you to make this change at breakfast, this change at lunch, and this change at dinner. And so in my circumstance, because I was introducing two things at breakfast and lunch and removing one thing at dinner, those are the simple changes that we were making, it was so much easier for me to see immediate growth, for me to see the benefit of this change in the outcome that I was getting. And you can see it's so easy to get caught up in these words, improvement, change. I keep using change over and over again, where that's one of our categories. But the transformation that was coming from me transforming the way I ate only required improvement. It didn't require change. And so the question isn't, when we're tapping, do I want change or do I want improvement? The question becomes, what is most useful for me? Is change most useful for me, or is improvement most useful for me? And because improvement is easier, because improvement typically is less disruptive, sometimes that's the best choice. So the thing that I actually want to tap on, just to close down this little bit of conversation, is I want to tap on this idea of being okay with improvement and not having to create change every single time. So tap on the side of the hand, take a nice big deep breath for me. And just move from tapping point to tapping point, repeating after me. And if you can do this out loud, I would encourage you to do that if it's safe and comfortable where you are as you're listening to this. I recognize the fact. I would like things to be different. I would like them to be better. And there is a part of me that really wants the biggest, the best, the most dramatic, transformation possible. And I really appreciate this desire. But I also recognize the fact bigger doesn't mean better. Grander doesn't mean more valuable. In some situations, the most valuable thing I can do is a small incremental improvement, which can create a radical difference, even as a bite-sized step. And so I give myself permission to know that as I look for transformation, I'm looking for the transformation that is the most useful. Which means that sometimes all I need is incremental improvement to make things radically better. I am not giving up on myself. I'm not letting myself down. But instead, I'm putting myself in a position to create the better that serves me. Nice, easy, deep breath. It's really such a simple thing. Do I want an improvement or do I need a change? And by looking at those two ideas, it's going to make it so much easier because we're not going to be in a circumstance where I'm simply trying to escape the thing that is bad, but we're putting ourselves in a position where we get to engage with the thing that might be great. And sometimes the thing that might be great is small and incremental, and that is all we need. So those are my thoughts on transformation in the lens of improvement and change, and how I find it really useful to look through those two particular lenses. If you know someone in your life who could appreciate a conversation like this as a framing device to help them to create transformation and healing in their own life, I'd encourage you to please pass this along. Our marketing budget is your word of mouth. It makes a difference for you to pass it along. And the really cool thing is if you pass this along to someone else, and even if they don't listen to it, the fact you've reached out and said, hey, I was thinking about you today, that is going to make their day and their life a little better today, which is going to make it better for all of us. Yes, that sounds super, super cheesy, but it is also super, super true. Other thing I want you to do is, and I got this idea from Secretly Incredibly Fascinating, which is an absolutely delightful podcast about facts, and the world is more interesting and fascinating than you'd ever believe. One of the things that Alex does at the end of every single episode is he does a random number generator to look back through the history. I did the exact same thing for the Tapping Q&A podcast before I started recording today. The random number generator kicked out the number 442. So if you go to tappingqanda.com/442, you're going to find a really interesting podcast. It is what I learned about tapping from Dolly Parton. I heard, you'll get the context in the particular episode, how I heard the phrase. But one thing Dolly Parton said was, when I feel emotions, I am fully committed to them, which is a really fascinating disposition. So I'd really encourage you to check it out, tappingqanda.com/442, to engage with and dive into something really, really awesome. As you look at the screen right now, you will see an entire archive of the Tapping Q&A podcast. We go back over 658 episodes just waiting there for you. I look forward to talking with you and tapping with you again real soon. Bye-bye.